Welcome back to another episode of GameScope Live. Again, leg is still very much broken.
My leg?
I know in the last video I said I wanted to discuss the John Wick game. Figured that's what we would talk about today. So without further ado, first things first, like, comment, share, hit subscribe, do all the things. That stuff helps a lot. Yeah, and then don't be afraid to leave me comments about what I can improve. Obviously, I know there's tons. We fixed a lot of the recording issues. The editing's been getting better. This is only realistically video number 4. But without further ado, let's get this show on the road.
A man with your skill set must be able to move unconstrained, unrestricted. He must be versatile, capable, adaptable. He must be grounded, stable, constant. I believe you are ready, sir. Yeah.
First of all, as a fan of the John Wick movies, this game looks wildly impressive. You know, a mix of gameplay and cinematics. Some camera angles have been adjusted for fair use, but it's all captured on PS5, which, again, awesome. What I wanted to talk about was Saber Interactive. Talk about the games that they've made, because Jurassic Park Survival, Turok Origins, they are making the Hellraiser game too. But then you look at, like, you know, they made John Carpenter's Toxic Commando, Road Kings, Painkiller, Tempest Rise. Oh, they made Space Marine too. Okay, all right. They got Quiet Place, The Road Ahead. I mean, they made games. Evil Dead the game, World War Z Aftermath, SnowRunner, Insurgency, Sandstorm. They've made some, you know, action adventure games, survival games. It looks like they're making a Jurassic Park survival game, Hellraiser Revival. I don't know what that's going to be like. They definitely have things in development. They definitely seem like a very capable studio. Yeah, Warhammer 40k, Space Marine 2. That game alone kind of gives them most of their weight. Partnerships including The Witcher 3, Halo, the Master Chief Collection, Crysis. Holy cow, Crysis Remastered, and many more. Okay, look, very capable game. Anyway, let's get to this video by On the Sticks. Go follow him. Probably link his profile below. So yeah, we'll see what he has to say.
They finally announced a AAA John Wick game. And normally when Hollywood says they are making a game, that is where I get cautious, because licensed games usually fall into one or two traps. They rush development to chase relevance, or they lean on cinematic spectacle instead of real mechanics. But this one feels different. Not because Keanu Reeves is involved, not because it was revealed at a state of play. It feels different because of timing. This game is arriving after the industry reset. After single-player action games prove they still matter. After Saber rebuilt credibility with Space Marine 2. So the real question is not, is this exciting? The real question is this: does John Wick finally have the right conditions to work as a game? Let's break that down. John Wick debuted in 2014.
One thing I want to say is, and I'm glad he brought it up, Saber seems like they're doing a bunch of licensed IP in the foreseeable future. Like I mentioned before, Jurassic Park and Hellraiser, John Wick, those are their next 3 upcoming games. So 3 very big licenses, and kind of to his point, licensed games never tend to do well. I think we are, he said industry reset. I don't think we're really in an industry reset. I think we're more so in a state where if a capable developer actually is proud and wants to make a game, I think they're more inclined to make a great game given the restraints and given the fact that licensing costs money and studios don't really have the budgets for it anymore. But Hogwarts Legacy is a perfect example of a game studio that can make a great game off of an IP without losing itself. Now, the second one is going to really determine if that still holds true, but studios are proving with IO making 007 and Saber making John Wick, I think those are two good games to get your feet wetted, especially because the IP is very niche and people either love the movies or don't. So the people who love the movies should love the game, right?
Or films, over $1 billion worldwide, a fully expanded universe with the Continental and Ballerina. This IP has been AAA ready for years. So why now? 5 or 6 years ago, licensed games were mostly mobile spin-offs, multiplayer live service attempts, or rushed tie-ins trying to release alongside a film. John Wick does not work in that model. John Wick is choreography. It is pacing. It is intentional violence. You cannot rush that into production. If this would have been announced in 2018, I would have been nervous, but 2026 is a different industry. Look at what has succeeded recently. Focused single player experiences. Combat first design. Games built around mechanical identity instead of a checklist of content. Players are responding to clarity again, and John Wick needs clarity. This character is not a power fantasy in the traditional sense. He is not invincible. He is efficient. Every movement has purpose. Every reload has rhythm. If that feeling translates into mechanics, you have something special. If it does not, it falls apart. And that leads us to the most important piece of this project. Before we talk about why this could work, we need to talk about why it could absolutely fail. Because this project lives or dies on one thing: combat identity. Not graphics, not story, not Keanu's likeness, combat. If this plays like a standard third person.
Agreed. We live in an era where most games, especially when they're backed by a big studio and two, a console, like Sony Interactive is backing this game, right? So for them, it's never a question of polish. It's never a question of visuals or graphics or mechanics. Everything's going to look and feel and play well. It's more so, is there a game behind the game? So for instance, Marvel 1984, I know everyone's talking about, oh, it's visually impressive, but is it going to be a 4-hour visually impressive experience where you're kind of like a passenger in a movie? Or is it going to be a 40-hour campaign where your decisions make meaningful impact in the story? I think that's what remains to be seen with any of these games. That includes 007, except I have a lot more faith in IO because after playing Hitman, it's all about player agency. And that last video where we talked about, the game director talking about how much tools he wants to give the players and how much freedom he wants to give the players, I'm actually a lot more relieved, to say the least, for 007. But he has a point. This game, in games like Star Wars, Jedi Survivor, games like that tend to either rely too much on the narrative and you lose player agency, which is fine. If it's an action adventure game and it's described as such, obviously you can't do an RPG with a character who's well known. He's John Wick. You are John. You're either playing as John Wick or you're not. So I very much see this being like an action adventure game. So hopefully they don't screw it up, but he's going to continue talking about why it could go wrong.
It's a shooter with John Wick's character model dropped in. It's over. John Wick is not about spraying bullets. It is rhythm. It is timing. It is controlled aggression. The moment it feels automated, the illusion breaks, which brings us to Saber. When Saber Interactive was announced as the developer, that changed the temperature of this reveal. If this had been handed to a studio with no recent combat credibility, the reaction would have been different. But Saber just shipped Space Marines too. Whether you love that franchise or not, that game had weight. Animations had impact, combat felt deliberate, momentum mattered. Saber understands physicality. That matters for John Wick, because this game does not need open world sprawl. It needs tight encounters. It needs tactical movement. It needs enemy behavior that forces decision making. If Saber leans into precision instead of spectacle, this could be the studio that makes a licensed game feel authored. But if they overscript it, if they rely on camera tricks instead of player agency, then it becomes a playable movie. And that is not what this needs to be. This game is set before the impossible task. That is a very smart move. You are not recreating movie scenes. You are not expanding the timeline. This gives them freedom. They can explore Wick building his reputation, they can introduce new characters, they can deepen the high table without being boxed into film canon moments. Prequel space allows gameplay first storytelling, and that tells me that this is not just a marketing accessory. This is meant to stand on its own. Early community reaction has been cautiously optimistic, not explosively hype, but more so hope. People are saying, I hope it plays like Max Payne, I hope it plays like Sifu, I hope it feels tactical, please don't make it generic. That tells me something important. The audience is not asking for spectacle, they're asking for flow. If this game captures that gun fu rhythm where movement, positioning, and precision matters more than button mashing, it has real upside. If it simplifies that into a cinematic shooter, it becomes really forgettable. If this game lands, it does something bigger than just expanding the IP. It proves that movie adaptations can wait. They can choose the right studio. They can focus on single player design instead of chasing trends. And right now, that kind of discipline matters because audiences are tired of the rush tie-ins. They want intention, just like the character this game is built around. So yes, I think this John Wick game makes sense, not because it exists, but because of when it exists. The industry is healthier for focused action games. Saber has momentum. Lionsgate is approaching this as a long-term expansion of the universe. Now that does not guarantee success, but it gives this project a real chance. And that is more than most licensed games ever get.
I don't think it's ever about timing. Obviously, timing plays a huge role for like a business purpose, but for as a player, I don't think there's ever a wrong time to make a game. More so, there's a wrong studio and there's a wrong approach, there's a wrong end goal of what the game wants to do. So long as Saber understands what they want to do and what players actually want from a John Wick game, I think that we should be in a good spot. Like I said, this isn't, he said this earlier, it's not 2018. This isn't where every IP is getting a game and they're just, it's live service IP games were the worst, right? We all remember that era. We're glad we're not there. So yeah, I'm always cautiously optimistic about things that I love. For instance, when the Fallout show was announced, I loved Fallout the game, and I was very cautiously optimistic that the show would live up to the hype, especially since, as a writer, I wrote a Fallout movie script, prequel, and then a movie script for Fallout in like 2014, sent it to Bethesda, and I got a very nice letter saying that it wasn't in their 10-year plan, and then literally 11 years later, they announced the show, which stung a little bit, Yeah, let's just say there was no one more invested than me, and then when I found out, Lisa Joy and Christopher Nolan were the ones backing it and producing it, kind of gave me a little hope. And I was like, all right, well, yeah, let's just say my horror version of that movie, or my prequel, which was called Run from the Book of Fallout, was more of like a horror survival film. And it was like first 12 hours of trying to find the vault after the bombs drop, which they kind of explore a little bit with the ghouls story in the show at Fallout. And same thing, there's season 2 of Fallout's kind of strangely enough, I don't want to say a ripoff because I didn't have New Vegas. I did set up New Vegas in the end of the movie, but yeah, I had like a 5-movie like plan that I sent them to the first 2 movies outlined. I had the first movie kind of scripted, like a rough script, probably like 80% done. And then I had the second movie about like 30% done, and then I kind of had just a general idea of where I wanted like the franchise to go. I was cautiously optimistic when the game was announced, and then I watched it and it was good. It was a good show. So I always side on the air of caution so I don't get disappointed. But I do think, like I said, if they go in knowing what players want, and so long as they can kind of hold firm to that and not, as On the Stick said, not chase spectacle, not make it an interactive movie, just make it an actual action adventure game, then I think we'll be fine. Other than that, that's John Wick. I think the game, drop a trailer like that, that's ballsy during the state of play. Especially when it says wishlist now. I'm going to check Steam. It says wishlist now, but the game doesn't have a release date. So to me, it says untitled John Wick game. You most certainly can wishlist it. That's wild. Coming soon. Okay, so wishlist. So we'll keep an eye on that whenever anything else drops for it. As always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Like I said, this is a good way for me to kill a couple hours. So as always, thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure watching and analyzing and breaking down for you guys the John Wick game.